Okay, so here in the rear, I'm IMcuddlebear versus here in the rear, Watcho, and this is from Watcho's perspective. So there's many points that Watcho needs to improve on as well, which is more aggression based and more late game off the aggression based. So in this, what I noticed from Watcho is that he always does all these like aggressive openings, whether it be roaches and wings and banes, something like that, or a variation of whatever, and it does damage. And I'm not knocking on it. Like aggression is aggression, but you need to understand why aggression is whatever. And I think, in my opinion, I think aggression actually is a harder way to play in some aspects. In the earlier game aspects, in the instant sort of aspect, but in the later games, that's up for debate. So, anyways, in this game, you actually opened with a drone scout and a gas pool, and you saw that they didn't take gas with your initial drone scout. I'm pretty sure that is why you went for a Ling Bane attack instead of something like a Roach attack, because you saw that, okay, no early gas, no Reaper, that means no scouting of me until Hellions or scans or, something else that's not as quick as a Reaper. So great, you go for this Baneling bust idea, and how do we sort of micro this? Well, what is the purpose of a Ling Bane bust? Well, obviously you're lacking in drones, and you made a bunch of units. So, what do you need to do? You either need to kill them, or you need to kill a lot of economy. Let's face it, you're not going to kill production buildings. You're not going to kill barracks. You're not going to kill factories. You're going to kill units, SCVs, and Marines, and you're going to kill scrunchy buildings like bunkers and supply depots. So if you kill Marines when they opened up, with just, if you just kill Marines, something that they're building and doesn't affect their economy directly, then that's kind of sad, because it doesn't, you're going to get behind because you didn't do enough damage worthy of your sacrificing of not making drones. So once again, I'm not knocking on your aggression, just try to make it clear, what are you trying to do with this build? You're trying to either kill them, or you got to kill a bunch of workers, or you're going to make them sink to the low econ level as you do. So you do this big attack, and the point is, in attacks like this, you need to do a lot of things. Okay, first you need to scout their wall off, which you did with these bunch of lings, because you need to know what to aim for when you bust. When you have a bunch of banelings, where do you go with them? Do you go around for the SPs? Do you go straight for this building? Well, when I scout this, if I have vision of this, I would easily just break this down, because this looks like a crappy wall off, which it is. And I don't mean to install anyone, but that is what it is. And to get to these Marines back here, it'd be extremely easy once this wall off is done. There's no like other next level whatever. So what you need to do is you need to scout with one ling only, because what happens is that you lose a bunch of lings, and those lings didn't hit anything, like they just died, and you need them in the bust. If you had them with the bust, you would have done more damage, because once the banelings are done, once the banelings crash, once all the buildings in the SimCity are weathered and damaged or gone, then your lings have full surface area compared to beforehand, and they need to do as much damage as they can, and you just lost a bunch of lings not doing anything. So to scout, you really just need vision of their wall off. You don't really need, and their units, hopefully you don't need that much vision. Maybe a ling comes here, sees a wall, skirts around, gets maximum scouting information, sees maybe Hellions or whatever, but instead you sort of used a lot of lings. Drone count is actually even, but they have mules, because Terran's a pretty good race. So whatever, you go about doing this, and the next point is, well, the first point is you need to scout. Second point is you need to preserve as many units as possible before the bust. And the third point is timing, to attack as soon as possible. So you morph your banelings pretty well here. You just, you didn't delay them that long. And you just need to go ham and just go for it. So before we go into this thing, there's something else. Going as soon as possible is only half of it. Making sure units are there and going for it is only half of going ham. The other half is balancing macro and micro. So when you have to look at the fight, and when you have to look at your base. So what you usually do, or what I usually do, or what I guess logically comes to mind is that, okay, I go back, use up all my money, inject, spread creep tumors, do whatever it is that takes time and doesn't require me to micro or macro or anything. Let those things settle in. Once I start those things, set it and forget it, and then go micro. You did that, which is great because you injected and you made drones and you made an extractor. So then you go and micro your fight, and you know you have it. You bought yourself some time for your macro. What when you should macro again is you sort of, this is variation. You don't, this is like what is that word? I don't know. It's you just don't. It's very fuck whatever the word is, whatever it is. So once, like, say you have your lings and your banes in this bust, your lings are a move or like surround a move, right? Your baneling is the other thing that really needs intense micro. So I want to macro as soon as possible after this bust is done. So what do? I use up all the banes, I a move with the lings, and once the banes are all gone, then there is no need for me to intensely micro my units anymore, because all the important units that need to be micro to maximize efficiency, they're gone. They've done their job, whether they failed or they succeeded. They're gone. All you have are lings. So, like, you know, right click the mineral line, try to kill SCVs if there's no marines to tank the aggro, just a move the marines or whatever, because you need to macro as soon as possible. You just can't micro for the entire game and accumulate a bunch of money, because that's actually what happened in this game, and we all fall victim to this. I mean, I'm saying this, but I also do it as well, because I'm not good enough to have Korean mechanics where I hit everything, hit Jadong injections, everything. So good thing is that you killed that thing right there, and to go back to it is that supply depots and bunkers, they require 4 banes each, okay? So let's see the path and how many banes you have. You have 8 banelings. So you theoretically need half of that to kill this. What you can do is lead off with a bunch of lings to tank widow mines and to tank any aggro fires to make sure that none of your banes explode prematurely. Lol, premature ejaculation. Anyways, that's great. Go in the sliver, because that's a structural weakness. 4 banes will kill all 3 of these buildings. Technically, if all goes well, if you had a bit more tank because your units just sort of died, then you would have 4 banes left and a bunch of lings. These lings, the furthest they can be away is actually right behind the banelings. You shouldn't keep them in the back, because you need to do as much aggression as possible, because this is timed aggression. This is a ling bane bust. This isn't like a broodlord siege bust. This is like, I gotta go and do as much damage as possible. Instead, your sort of banes went around, they died. They blew up the wall, but they didn't, you know, quite do as much damage. And here you fall really victim to like a really lucky situation where your units just couldn't get the surround on the line of units. And sometimes it's luck, and sometimes it's skill. And it's not like lucky on the Terran's part or anything. It's just that it's unfortunate for your lings to have gotten into that bad positioning. So once you run your lings in and there's like production buildings rallying units out, chances are you're not going to get free reign on the SCVs, because they have units to tank the aggro. So what you should have done is actually just back off, but it's hard to know that. And even if you don't back off, this little baneling thing is kind of cute, but the engineer base sees it, so it's not quite as cute as you thought it, or you didn't think it worked quite as well as you wanted it to be. If they're watching their base, obviously. And yeah, so if your units come in and they're trapped there, just shift right click at SCVs, because you need to do some damage. And to go back, the macro wasn't quite as great, because you actually, in this engagement right here, you're not producing anything, right? Look at your production. And then all of a sudden you make 14 drones. That costs 700 minerals. So 700 minerals were frozen. So once again, you want to macro and set things and forget things. So say like you had 100 gas, and instead of making those 2 banelings, you click your layer, and your layer takes like 80 seconds to finish. So you could just, you know, save some time, don't attack that early, click your layer button, and then attack. And all of a sudden, when you finish microing and macroing and everything, your layer's already, you know, halfway done, so your meters can come out really quickly. Because as is, your meters come out extremely late. And the last point of this going ham point is how much, the aftermath of it. How much damage did you do? How much time have you bought yourself the drone? As you saw yourself, you did like a giant fucking drone production cycle, and that's great because you need to catch up in economy because they are on 2 base and you know they have a bunch of stuff. So, yeah. And what kind of game is it going to be? Why are you buying time with these drones? Why aren't you going all in again? Well, it's because you're going to go for whatever, burrow banes or upgraded lings or spire, and this spire is kind of like really late, and I know there's a bane bust going on and I know whatever, but if you start your layer earlier and if you start your spire early, because that takes 100 seconds, then they could have just come up quicker. And say you miss micro 4 lings and 4 lings or 4 to 10 lings die because you couldn't micro them because you're clicking your layer or spire button. Well, that's much better, in my opinion, than delaying your mutas by like a minute or 2 or 3 because you didn't quite micro them or macro them or you know whatever. So next point is going to talk about mutas, and we're going to go to the point while I sip my drink until the mutas come out. So a big attack comes and they attack your third. I'm not going to rewind, but just saying, your spire finished a long time ago, your mutas aren't producing. And all this money that you've been saving up, you want to get rid of that as soon as possible because that's good macro to have as least money as possible. If you save money from mutas, that's completely fine. That's like one of the odd situations that having high money is completely fine because you're banking resources, you're going to transition into mutas, but your spire's done, whatever, and you haven't made all these mutas. If you made all these mutas and you lost your third, it'd be much better than sitting with all these resources, not making third, and skimping out on the Ling Bane. To defend that giant Marine Ball, if you had Ling Bane, Lings and Speed Banes, which you should have already because your layer finished a long time ago, then you can easily defend it and your third would be completely fine and you can start droning it. But instead, you neither went for ground army defense and you also didn't go for mutas. So all this bank resources it went from being an okay banking to like a sort of like a bad macro mistake. Once again, I'm not trying to insult anybody, but like I'm just saying it like it is. And how important are mutas? Well, in HOTS, I don't want to go too much into this, but mutas are basically to counter the medevac boost, or else we would go infestors or quick ultras, because mutas don't quite kill mass marine as well. I think mass marine actually counter mutas pretty well. So do widow mines. But why do we do mutas? Because we need to kill the medevacs and harass. Harassing is just another thing to do. So, as I said in the previous video, which you probably won't watch because you're not Terran, you need that initial muta ball. If you lose that initial muta ball, it's hard to build up that big flock of mutas. If you have your initial muta ball and you keep it alive, it's much easier to keep adding in mutas. You can add 1 or 2 mutas and your army will still get stronger. If you don't have any mutas and you add in 1 or 2 mutas, that's not going to kill medevacs. That's actually just going to die to anything, even a medevac, even like a Viking. So losing all those mutas is a big problem. So this is one of those times where you prioritize microing mutas over macroing because each muta loss is 100-100. Say before when I said, okay, I would rather start my layer earlier and lose 6 to 10 lings, that's just like scrappy minerals. But if you lose like all your mutas because you're macroing, or because you're microing this ling attack right here, that's highly not worth it. And now your drop potential is completely favored for the Terran player. And they just took their gold base because you lost all your units, therefore you have no right to do anything in this game except for try to survive. Which is entirely the truth, because you can't do anything, and they just went ham on the gold. And your creep spread is quite lacking. I know that they've been killing your queens and stuff, but just, you know, whatever, just try to connect creep between your bases, at the very least. Use your overlords to do that if you don't want to use creep tumors and such. So you have a really early good upgrade lead against your opponent. So next point, playing from behind. What are you doing? Okay, it might be you might not have thought you're behind, but from my perspective, I think you are behind because you lost that entire Muta flock and your entire army, and the resource loss app is heavily in favor of the Terran player. So playing behind, what you have to ask yourself, what are you doing and what are you looking for? So you're in this game for a reason. You didn't type out GG for a reason. And what is that reason? So that reason for you is a hive and quick upgrades because you have quick 2-2 whereas your opponent has shitty upgrades. If you don't have vision, whatever. And to get ultras are really good. So you want to get those upgrades as soon as possible. And once you have ultras, those can kill marines and medevacs and mines a lot easier. Marauders not so much. Marauders actually pretty counter them in high numbers, but you're waiting for the ultras. And so that's what you're really looking for, okay? So you want to get that as soon as possible because anytime in between that, they can press their advantage against you and they will slowly, cost-effectively trade well against you. And you're on 4 base, you don't have a big army, and they can double drop you and attack you at the same time. And if your opponent was a bit better and didn't honestly, if you burrowed an infestor and had it sneak off here, and before all this came here and he scanned and everything, then you could just stand up, fungal this ball, and then just A move and they would die. But that's things to look for to crawl back into the game. You're taking risks to crawl back in the game. In this specific game, in my perspective, your risks are that you took 4 bases, even though you have spines, you can't quite defend them as much. Say they did a drop here, and if it got cleaned up and they picked up and dropped here, then that would be a big nuisance to deal with. And they also drop here, then you just got dropped on 2 opposite sides of the map, and a push is coming out here. You're kind of screwed. You're kind of stretched for units. You don't have a big Ling Bane to crash into their one army anymore. It's many different armies, and you have a small Ling Bane force, and your units are scrappy and whatever. So that's that. Okay, so we're gonna continue on with the replay. You decided not to go back into meter production to stop the drops, and it actually worked out for you this game pretty luckily because your opponent didn't go for drops. Whether you believe that to be luck or not, or whatever. So going on, next point is after successful army engagement. So we're just going to speed up until that happens. So right now, you see that your opponent has a gold base. They potentially could have taken these 2 bases really easily without you contesting them seriously, and they could have just been, sitting and making a big army and attacking over and over into you, and you can't hold these 2 bases if they do that, but as it so happens, you can do it, and it's great. And remember how I said you want your 3/3 and your ultras to come out as soon as possible? Make your ultras as soon as your ultraless cavern is done, because chitinous plating is not like a upgrade that benefits only like the ultras that come out after the upgrade's done. Just do it as quick as possible because against marines without chitinous plating, they're still pretty damn good. They'll kill every marine they have. It's just that they'll take more damage doing so. But I'm just saying, once again, you're banking money like the mutas. You're banking money, but you're not using it. So therefore, it's sort of a bad macro mistake. And for chitinous plating and upgrades like that, again, go for the set and forget it. Just if you want to micro, do the macro first and then micro and inject first, So then things that take time will be much more effective. And you're sort of patch zerging it through, moving your army around. That's why your 4th actually gets killed off, and you just get cleaned up once again. And so, going for the ultraless trade. You make 11 ultras, which is like the funniest thing in the world. And they come out and they surprisingly just destroy your opponent's army. And that is because your opponent didn't make a single marauder until they were dead. So it's kind of funny. Yeah. So, after successful army engagement, what do you do? And that question is answered by the subsequent question is, what kind of successful engagement was it? Was it cost effective? Did it give you time? Did it give you map control? What did it give you? Well, in this case, it gave you everything you ever wanted. And you just, like, cleaved them. Like, cleaved them so hard. Like, I was just gonna make a cleavage joke, but I can't think of one right now. So, in turn, you kill their gold base. Oops. You killed their gold base. You lift up all these CCs. This base could have died, and you could have burrowed a ling there, which would have helped you immensely in this game, actually. And you get doom dropped here. Honestly, killing an entire army off like that, we're gonna go back, okay? Killing the entire army like that, and I think it's worth trying to just kill your opponent off right there because they have no marauders whatsoever. So you kill all these units, and they're pretty much dead. You cleaned up their medevacs, and you cleaned up a rallied army as well. You kill this off, and you back off. But if you see in the unit tab, they have 27 Marines. Once again, we saw how good Marines were against Ultralists. 1 Marauder, 9 medevacs, 14 mines. I know there's SimCity, I know whatever, but if you just come in and destroy all of this, you kill their supply depots, they can't, they have to spend more money on supply depots. And that's just like one of the least things that you have to worry about. You kill their production, you can't their production, they're pretty much dead. You kill their natural and their main and whatever, and just kill anything that you can get your hands onto. And they're pretty much dead because they don't have a big bio ball to counteract your ultras. They're rallying out. Only if you're fighting into a choke, like say you're attacking into a Terran main and they have a giant army here sieged out, then it's bad. But if you attack right away and they can't rally as much units out, I think you can kill them. I don't know. So, yeah. But instead you sort of back off. It's okay, but like this was like the winning moment for you. This is like, there were many winning moments in this game, but this was like the biggest one because you could have just killed off this base, denied it, burrowed ling, poop creep. They can't do anything. They're on 2 base. This is mined out. This is mined out. They are using them to bank up, and all of a sudden the game's like even again, and you can take any amount of bases you want. So yeah. So next point, Zerg late game pressure on Terran, and Terran late game pressure on Zerg. So what does that mean? For Terran, mostly it's drops. That's like the most significant thing. And for Zerg, it's a big giant fucking Ultra Ling Bane army crashing into a Terran army and being as cost effective as possible, which is what happened in that fight right there. So you sort of see it. And not only, and you don't, since it's like one big crash, you don't have to think about it as all you have as pressure is one giant big fucking crash. What you can think about it is the potential of crashing. If you don't play that card, you still have that card in your hand, and they know they know that you have a card in their hand. So as a result, they'll always have to keep their army spread out, and they have to be careful with their army, because if they don't, then you crash and then they die, and then you win the game. But that's the sort of pressure that Zerg have, and I found out through my games and shit, and from my perspective, okay, this isn't truth, but if you don't pressure that card of a giant crash onto the Terran, they are going to start dropping, and once they start dropping, they won't stop dropping because it keeps your army back to defend their army, their shitty drop army, and they can just replenish those units easily. But what they do is they force you back, they alleviate pressure on their side of the map, and what happens? They take bases, and they start mining, and they start dropping down the OP mules. Thank you, David Kim, you son of a bitch. I'm joking. And therefore, that base is killed, this base is killed. You're on like 1 base again. You're not even on 1 base again. So always try to keep that army, that pressure card, right at them, because you're saying, okay, you are doing like drops, you're allocating your parts of your army away from your main army. That means if my main army in its full potential engages your army right now, then technically, if we're both max, I should have more supply in army compared to your army. And their drops might just only be halfway across the map, because if you play your cards right, if you play that card right, you will attack them right as they allocate units away. So that drop isn't going to help them defend this push at all, and you can get as cost effective as possible. So, also, the idea of banking, tech switching, and thinking more than just a 200-200. Say this is a standard game, say this is, you're both maxed and whatever, and say whatever. Usually you think about this more in Protoss, Zerg versus Protoss, but we're going to think about it in this just in general. Is that, okay, I have 200-200 army, and they have a 200-200 army. Technically, say like a Protoss army 200-200 attacks a 200-200 Zerg army, and say they are evenly matched, like in composition-wise, then the Protoss army will be ahead if they trade, the same, because Protoss units are they cost more and whatever, so they just have more army. But what the Zerg has is a tech switch remax, and you just hold down SR, max out the roaches, SU, max out the ultras, whatever. So that's not a 200-200 army, that's like a 300-200 army. So you gotta think more than just the 200-200 army. Say, oh, is this army killable? How killable is this army? Is this army killable with just my 200-200, or is it killable with my next army that's going to come? If you think ahead, if you plan ahead, it's just going to go better for you, instead of just thinking in the instant. So that's sort of the thing you have to remember all as well. And the point in this game is not necessarily 200-200, but, after that 11 Ultra Giant attack, and say those die to a bunch of Marauders, what are you going to remax with? Most obvious answer is Broodlords, but you're so sort of strapped with money, that can't exactly quite happen. That's when you start going for things like Infestors and Vipers. If you Fungal and Blinding Cloud, a Marauder, they can't shoot you until they are melee range, so. Just need things like that. Okay, my throat's actually like really sore right now. So, next point, salvaging of self. What does that actually mean? I didn't quite know what it meant when I wrote it as well. So, we're going to think about this. In late game TBT, let's face it, the game's going to get sloppy, okay? The game didn't go one-sided and someone didn't win right away. What does that mean? That means your queens have inject energy, okay? If you don't want to inject, because all you do is make ultras, and ultras don't cost as much larva as, say, things like lings, then pull your queens and have them with your army. Like, this ultra could be so easily transfused, because this queen already has a transfuse itself. You don't need that many injects, because you don't have the money to spend all of it. You still have 16 larvae, so, this queen right here, there's another, like, full energy queen. So, salvaging of self. Oh, there's two queens here. I don't know where the hell the other one went. So, salvaging of self really means I need to reallocate like all my stuff, so then it's as beneficial to me as possible. So one thing you can do, and what a lot of people do, is they pull their queens from their mains and their bases, and if they have much money, they'll start another queen and they'll start injecting it, and that queen will have 0 energy when they inject. But if you inject with your main queen, it's going to have over 100 energy. It's not going to be efficient at all. So you pull that queen with you, you have transfuses, and transfuses are just energy to heal something like an Ultralist, which costs minerals and gas, a shit ton of minerals and gas, and it's quite easy to keep Ultralists alive with transfuse, because you're not wasting energy, because they have so much health. You can heal them for 125 or 150 or whatever it is. 125, and you're just trading away technically like bad inject macro for health on an Ultralist. So that's actually really good. So that's one source of sort of salvaging. Another sort of salvaging is static defense relocation, or just anything. So say you have a bunch of overlords, say you're 82 out of 168, and you're never gonna get to 168 again, and this is just you thinking ahead. Then start pooping creep on expansions, and even though they might die to turrets, even though they might die to widow mines, even though they might die to marines, they'll delay their orbital command. Delaying their orbital command is a big deal, because they can start muling as soon as a late game Terran mule drops down. That's like the most OP lulzy thing, as it appears to be, because they just get so much money. And in scrappy games, Terran will always win like early game. If you ever remember in like early Wings of Liberty and like Scrap Station and like Steps of War, Terran can just float their CC and drop down with no SCVs and drop one mule, and they'll just have a bunch of shit again, and you won't have anything, even though you have the same amount of workers because they have mules. So, what do we learn is that if we drop creep and burrow lanes and stuff, doing scrappy things like this, even if you sacrifice your overlords, then that's good, because you're delaying their imbalanced mining, lol, David Kim Hugh. And say you want to tank Widow Mine shots and all you have are lings, then use your speed overlords, you know, because if you're desperate enough, just salvage the stuff you're not going to use. But if you're going to use them, don't salvage them, right? So say like this base, this is a critical base. This is one of your 2 bases that's mining right now. This base has no defense other than your army and these 2 scrappy queens. They don't have any defense. This base has 3 spines. But if they drop here, they float here, here, drop here, you're pretty screwed as well. So what can you salvage? Well, these 4 spine crawlers don't do jack shit, actually. They actually just sit here. Do you think they're going to push through your natural, through this Evo chamber wall, without pushing here first? Obviously not. So, and are these Evo chambers really that more important than your expansions? I don't think so either. So, like, even your hive and like this stuff, this is a high priority, high value target, but they have to go through this first. And why wouldn't they go through this first, right? So that's and it's harder for them to attack here if you have your army and have this much map control. So move these spines, move the spore, and put them somewhere else. And keep running your creep, because creep is free if you're ever out of money and stuff. So salvaging itself means get your queens, pull your queens, use your energy, don't keep your energy full, use changelings or use contaminate, whatever suits you better, and relocate your static defense buildings that aren't quite doing anything, because when you made them, you might have been rich. When you made them, you might have been maxed. When you made them, you might have not needed these minerals. Now you need them back. But you can't get them back. You can't salvage them like a bunker, so you need to use them to maximum potential. And they can move. And one of the reasons they can move is so you can relocate them. So going onwards. This game, if I played this game and I lost this, and I was in your position and I lost, I would be pretty mad. Initially, I would be pretty mad, because it's like, oh, I had this game. There's so many times I had this game, but I sort of just mismicroed or anything. Don't take this game to heart, even if you don't get mad or anything. Just don't take this to heart. Learn what you can from it. There's tons of things to learn from it. I just like talked about like an hour for both sides. There's tons of things to learn. So the whole reason, like, why did you lose the game? If you rage GG right now, like going through the ending, why did you lose the game? Well, my army died and I couldn't get enough bases. That's why I lost the game. No, that's not the reason you lost the game. There's like, if that's the main reason you lost the game, there's like tons of other reasons. Reasons like, oh, I let them mine up the gold base. Oh, I let them get this expansion. Oh, I let them get, there's like so many goddamn different reasons of why you lost this game. Don't take it to heart, because there's so many things to fix right now. They could have won just because you didn't scout their base and they just dropped some mules on it. There's no need to be frustrated. There's no need to be upset because they relied on something that you sort of had a mistake to do. You took part of your own downfall, so try to fix those first. Once you fix those first, things like muling, things like Terran medevac boost, those things will damper down, because if you get more solid in your play, then they can't quite take advantage of the raise as much. And same with the other side. Say they're Terran, their army, they weren't watching it, it all dies, and like what happened with the ultras. And they go like, oh my god, Zerg can just remax onto like ultras and shit. They don't give a shit. Like that's the same feeling for them. So don't get frustrated, and just try to learn as much as you can from this game. And that's all I have to say about the Zerg side. So thanks for listening and watching.